No, 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 don't do it!
Hi there. It might be useful to list the 12 Deadly Spreadsheet Sins. I'm Nabil Murad, and in this training video, I'll show you the most important things to avoid if you are using spreadsheets for whatever business function. On the flip side, I'll show you some of the best practices in Excel. So let's get started. Using constants in calculations. This is probably the number one complaint of spreadsheet use in business. In this example, I would like to calculate for each day of the week the total mileage done by each vehicle. And I already calculated the total for Monday. And let's see what I did. If I put it in the edit mode by hitting the F2 key, you will notice that I hard-coded the numbers. I'm adding the numbers. I'm typing the numbers in my calculation. What's the problem with that? If I try to change one of the input values, and that's very possible, if I want to change one of the input values, what will happen? Would my formula update? I'm going to do that, and look at this. The moment I hit enter, nothing changes. So using constants in your calculation does not create dynamic calculations. I'll undo this last change to show you the good practice. The good practice is to create a sum function. So I could do that by typing an equal sum, and then I hit the tab key, click and drag to select the input range. When I close the bracket, I hit enter. I created a dynamic calculation. At this time, if you change one of the input values and then you hit enter, your calculations are dynamic and they update automatically. Summing is beyond a doubt the most commonly used calculation in Excel. That's why Microsoft created the AutoSum tool, which is available on the right side of the Home tab, and it's also available on the left side of the Formulas tab. So I'm going to use the AutoSum, and to use the AutoSum I can perform multiple calculations simultaneously. I'm going to delete my first one, and with a single click I would be calculating all the totals for the 7 days of the week. I could also use another tool, so I'm going to delete this sum. And this time I'll be using the Quick Analysis tool, which is a relatively new tool. It was introduced in Office 2013 for the first time. Just make a selection and hover over this icon which pops up when you release your mouse. Clicking on this tool called the Quick Analysis tool enables you to do a lot of things. You have 5 tabs in the Quick Analysis tool. Clicking on the Totals tab will give you a bunch of options. Would you like to have a sum? Would you like to get an average? Would you like a count, a percentage total, and so on? So this is another option for calculating the sum. All these options are dynamic. So do not use constants in your calculations unless they are universal, like 60 minutes in an hour or 12 months in a year. Put formula inputs in a cell and then build the formula with cell references. This will lead to a dynamic, accurate workbook. Prioritizing by using colors. Using a color to indicate something or to prioritize a list is great if you are the only person using the Excel file. That is hardly ever the case. You would have to explain what you mean by each color, and when the values change, you need to reformat manually. Excel has conditional formatting to do this. In this example, I would like to highlight numbers greater than 200. I have the same data set on the left side and on the right side. On the left side, I applied manual formatting by selecting all the numbers while pressing Ctrl, and then I went to the Home tab and I applied a yellow fill. So this has been formatted manually. What will happen if one of these numbers goes below 200? So let's say I make it 125. When I hit enter, the formatting is not gone, and I have to take care of reformatting manually. So I'll undo this change, and let's see a better way of doing this. The better way is by using conditional formatting. What is conditional formatting? It's a special type of formatting that overrides the regular formatting whenever a condition is met. Conditional formatting is stored in memory. So you start by selecting the range where you want to store your conditional formatting, and on the Home tab, click on the down arrow of conditional formatting. We have 5 predefined rules. I'll go with the first one, the highlight cell rule, and when I hover over it, a flyout menu pops up. From this flyout menu, I'll be selecting greater than. I want to highlight numbers greater than 200, so I'll type 200, and look at that, numbers have been already formatted. If you don't like the format applied by default, okay, click on the down arrow for this list, and you can select any other formatting. I'll go to custom format, which will open the format cell dialog box, and I'll specify a fill color. I'll select the yellow color to match the other one that was done manually, and then I'll hit OK, and I'll hit another OK. Now they apparently look the same, but you know what? There is a huge difference between the two, because in this second set, where I applied conditional formatting, if the number goes below the cutoff I specified, so in this case the conditional formatting will disappear. If another number goes above, so let's say I'll change this one to 354. When I hit enter, look at this, conditional formatting pops up. Do not assign a meaning by static manual formatting. Instead, use a dynamic conditional formatting. Scaling fonts for printing. If you are happy with the font size, but just want to change a font to make it look bigger or smaller on paper when printed, you are making a mistake. You can adjust to any size for printing or for displaying on screen without changing the actual font size. In this example, I have 7 columns that I would like to print. Let's see how it looks like when printed. So I'm going to hit the shortcut Ctrl P, and it will take me to the backstage view, and this is how it looks like. So I do have a lot of problems. First of all, there is a missing column. The last column in blue is missing. Also, this sheet will print over 20 pages, and if I move to the next page by clicking on the right arrow, look at this, I don't have any column headers here. The margins are not equal on either side. So how do I adjust this? I see clients going to the original sheet and trying to squeeze the 7 columns into one single sheet by reducing the font size and accordingly the column width as well. You don't need to do that. We can tell Excel to squeeze it right and left. So if you just want to improve the appearance on screen to make it easier to read on screen, so we have the zoom slider in the lower right corner. By clicking on the plus sign, you make it bigger. By clicking on the minus sign, you make it smaller. You can drag the slider right and left. But what about printing? To adjust everything for printing, I'll go to the Page Layout tab. And on the Page Layout tab, I have this little square here, the dialog box launcher. And it will launch the Page Setup dialog box. So if you give it a click, or use the shortcut Alt PSP, it will open the Page Setup dialog box, and in this dialog box I can change the scaling of my worksheet. So I just want to fit it on one single page, so I'll select this second option. I can make it bigger by adjusting the percentage, the scaling percentage in the upper option, but I'll be selecting the second radio button. I want to fit it into one single page wide, and here it says one single page tall. If I keep this one, that will be too small to be legible, so I'm going to delete this one. What does it mean? It means I'm squeezing the 7 columns right and left, but for the number of pages tall, I'm telling Excel, take as many pages as you want. I'm going to fix so many other problems along the way. If I go to margins, I can center it right and left by checking this box. I can also add a header and footer if I wish, but I'll go to the Sheet tab, and on the Sheet tab, I have rows to repeat at top. If I put my blinking cursor in this box, I would like to specify the column header to repeat at top of each page. So I'll put my blinking cursor on row number 4 and select it. Now let's have a look at the print preview, how it will look like. That's a lot better. Margins are equal on either side, and the missing column now appears here. If I move to the next page, I have column headers at the top. I was able to fix all the printing problems without changing the font size, and at the same time, I'm squeezing the number of pages, which were originally 20 pages, now they're only 8 pages. I could scale my fonts up or down for printing through the Page Setup dialog box. Using a plus sign. Excel knew that many of their customers were former Lotus 123 users and allowed people to keep using a plus sign to start a formula. Let's see what Excel does if you type a plus sign at the beginning of any formula. I'm in cell B2 and I would like to multiply cell A1 by 2. So instead of typing an equal sign, I'll try to type a plus sign and see what happens. So I'll type a plus sign and I say 2 multiplied by whatever I have in A2, and then I hit Control Enter. What did Excel do in this case? When I hit the F2 key, Excel is replacing the plus sign with an equal sign. Excel is not really happy anymore with the plus sign. So it's replacing the plus sign with an equal sign, whether you see it in the cell or you see it in the formula bar. Let's see another example. I'm in cell B3 and I would like to refer to cell A3. So instead of typing an equal sign, I'll type a plus sign and just click on cell A3. Let's see what Excel is doing in this case. When I put it in the edit mode or look in the formula bar, I see that Excel is adding an equal sign preceding the plus sign that I typed. So Excel is not really happy by adding or starting a formula with a plus sign. Of course, you get the job done, but in the long run, you usually get yourself into trouble with it. Start your formulas and functions with an equal sign. Do not use a plus sign to start a formula. Empty rows and columns. Empty rows are inserted to make a sheet look nice. However, by splitting the January data from the February data from the March data by having empty rows, Excel is assuming you are dealing with different lists, not with one single list. And if I try to create a total underneath by using the AutoSum, I'll go to the very bottom and click on AutoSum. Look what happens. It will therefore work only on one single set, not on the entire list. To create a proper data set, I need to get rid of the empty rows, separating each month's transaction. And there are so many ways for doing this. I'll show you 2 of them. First of all, I could start by creating what we call a helper column. I'm creating this helper column where I'll be using a count A function equal count A, and the count A function is counting any non-blank cells. So when I select the range and then hit enter, I could copy this formula down by clicking and dragging to the entire list. So when you look at the result of the count A, when I have an empty row, it's returning a 0. I'm going to filter my list based upon this new column. So I'll hit Ctrl-Shift-L to bring the functionality for a filter, click on the down arrow, and then say I just want to keep the zeros. And when I hit OK, these are the zeros. If I select these rows, these are the empty rows. I could get rid of them by saying I want to delete these rows, delete sheet rows, and I'm done. Now if I clear the filter by going to the down arrow of the helper column, clear filter, I got rid of all the empty rows. Now the helper column is totally useless. I could delete it by right-clicking and delete. I have a preference to using the Control- to delete, Control+ to insert. That's one way of getting rid of the empty rows. Let me show you another technique for getting rid of the empty rows. I have another copy of the same exact worksheet, and I'll be selecting column A, and I want to go to the Go to Special dialog box. I could do that by going to the right side of the Home tab in the Editing group and select Go to Special. Alternatively, I could hit the F5 key and then click on Special, and here is the Go to Special dialog box. I would like to select blanks, and when I hit OK, all the blank cells are highlighted. Now I can delete the entire row by clicking on the down arrow and select Delete Sheet Rows, and I was able to get rid of the empty rows. Do not split your data by empty rows. This is called a cross-tabulated data. It has column headers at the top, and it has row labels on the left side, and the data is at the intersection of the columns and rows. And this one is called a list. This is a normalized list. Cross tabs, like the example on the left side, with column headers and row headers, are nice for a visual report, but the data cannot be used in any other way. People like to view data cross-tabulated, like the example on the left side, while a computer likes to process it in a totally different way. Excel is an excellent analyzer of data, as long as this data is organized in rows, like a list, like my example on the right side, much like a database. However, for reporting, Excel has pivot tables for a good reason. It is much easier to render a table to a cross tab than the other way around. Look at our example. We have a data set that shows student names in column A, the classes and grade in columns B, C, D, E. This is not a proper data set. We should only have 3 columns and a lot more rows for the analysis. Once we have normalized our data set, we can do anything we want: sort, filter, build a pivot table. And to normalize my data set, I will have first to convert it into a table. And to convert it into a table, I'm using the shortcut Ctrl-T, and then I hit Enter, and my data has been converted into a table. Then I'll go to the Data tab of the ribbon, and I want to send it to my query editor to normalize it. So I'll click on From Table. The query editor opens. I'm going to name this query Grade Table. That will be the same name of the table that will be sent back to Excel. And then I'll be selecting the columns, starting from the second one. I'll press Shift and select the rightmost column and go to the Transform tab of the query editor and say I would like to unpivot this column, which means for each one of these numbers I will have a separate row. By clicking on Unpivot Column, now I was able to render it in a proper data set. I just need to fine-tune my data a little bit, so I'll be selecting the column label for the second column and I'll name it Class, and then hit Enter. I'll select the column label for the third column, I'll name it Grade, and then hit Enter. Now that I have done that, I want to send it back to Excel, so I'll click on the Home tab, click on the down arrow for Close and Load To, and select Close and Load To. Where would you like to send it? I want to send it back to my existing worksheet, and here I have to minimize and select a destination to send it back. When I hit OK, look at that. I'll be sending my data, my normalized data, back to Excel. This is a normalized data set. It looks spectacular, and now I can use it for anything I want, for sorting, for filtering, for creating pivot tables. Do not use a cross-tabulated setup for your source data. Using complex formulas. In this example, I have a date column, a payment, product, region, and sales. And I would like to add up my sales based on 2 conditions, a condition in the payment method and a condition in the region. And I already created a sum-ifs formula to do that. Let's have a look at this formula. I'll put my formula in the edit mode. Wow, it's a complicated formula. And this complicated formula simply means I would like to add up the sales, the range in blue, based on 2 conditions. Condition number 1, a payment method. This is the entire range of payment methods, and my condition is Visa. And then another condition in the region, the range in green. based on a second condition, the east above the formula. It's a complicated formula. These formulas are difficult to work with. They require selecting long ranges, locking ranges, and they are difficult to understand. Instead, if I name the source range, you can create a much more simple, descriptive formula. There is no need to make your formulas look complex. Let's see how we do that. I'm going to hit Escape, and I'll start by naming my ranges. And to name the range, I start by selecting any single cell in my range and hit the shortcut Control asterisk, the star on the numeric keypad, Control asterisk, to highlight the entire range. And then I'll use the shortcut Control Shift F3, the Create Names from Selection. The dialog box opens. I need to name my ranges by using the top row, so I'll take the check away from left column and then hit OK. Look at that. I already named each individual column by using the top row. To check, I'll click on the down arrow of the name box, and look at this. If I select payment, Excel recognizes the entire range. If I select region, Excel highlights the entire range. Now I can go back and create my descriptive formula. I have the same exact setup, so I'll start by typing equal SUMIFs. What would you like to sum? Oh, I named the range, so I'll type sales, and here you go. I hit the tab key, and here is sales. Then I hit comma to move to the next argument. I'll start dealing with my two conditions. You can start with any one you like. So let's start with criteria range 1. The criteria range 1 is my payment, so I'll type P, and here is my payment. I already named the range, and that's the advantage. What's your condition in this range? One cell to my left, and then I hit comma. My second condition will be the region, so if I start typing RE, here is the region, then I hit comma. What's your condition in this region? It's the east. Look at my formula. Clean, clear, and descriptive. Much better than the complex formula I created before. So when I hit enter, it's dynamic because I created data validation list. If you want to learn about data validation list, you can watch my tutorials from basic to power user on creating data validation lists. Split complex formulas into multiple smaller ones and use names instead of cell reference. That will create a much better, descriptive, efficient formula. Using the backspace to change wrong input values. It's not uncommon to make errors when selecting input values for our calculations. But if we do, how we correct them? In this example, I would like to calculate a payment for a loan. What if I borrow $24,900 at an annual interest rate of 4% and I have to pay it back over 5 years? How much will be my monthly payment? So in cell C6, I'll be creating a payment function equal PMT, and then I hit the tab key. I need to select the rate, so I already converted my rate into a monthly rate, and then I hit comma, and then I need to select the number of periods. I should be selecting the number of periods coming from cell E6, but by mistake, and I'm going to do that intentionally, by mistake I clicked on a totally wrong cell. How do I correct this? Most people use the backspace. I do that. That's simply a waste of time. Do not use the backspace. If you select a wrong input cell, just select another one. It will replace the previous one. Select a third one, and then select the correct one. That's all what you need to do. Do not waste your time. I'll hit a comma and select the loan amount, and then I'm done. When I close the bracket, I calculated my formula. If you want it to look like other numbers, it looks like that because this is currency formatting. So if you wish to have your number look like other numbers, convert it to a positive number by putting it into the edit mode, and then to the left side of PMT type a minus sign. Minus of a minus equal plus, negative of a negative equal positive. Do not use the backspace to correct input values. Source selection for pivot tables. Pivot tables are used to summarize and analyze source data. which is often huge in size. I have a huge data set. Let's see how many rows do we have. So I can select the top row, hover over the lower border of the selected cell. When you see the mouse pointer changing to a four-headed arrow, just double click on it and it will take you to the very bottom. I have over 2,000 rows. If I hover over the top border of this cell and double click, it will take me to the top. And to create a pivot table, I could select my entire source list by dragging. I could do that by dragging. That's a waste of time. If you are more advanced, you can use shortcuts. So I'm selecting the cell in the upper left corner, Shift Control right, Shift Control down. That would be selecting the top. Much easier than doing this. If you have a proper list with blank cells all around, all what you need to do is to select one single cell. And then how do we create a pivot table? If I go to the Insert tab of the ribbon and click to the very left on Pivot Table, Excel will recognize the entire list. Alternatively, I'm going to use the shortcut Alt-NV, and the Create Pivot Table dialog box pops up. Look what happens in the background. Although I was selecting one single cell, Excel is able to identify my list because I have blank cells all around. So you don't need to click and drag, or you don't need to use shortcuts. Just select one single cell. And when I say I would like to create my pivot table in the existing worksheet, I'll specify a destination and then hit OK. Here is the beginning of my pivot table. This is what we call the pivot table placeholder. Creating the pivot table is a matter of dragging and dropping. So I'm going to select the region, drop it in the row area. I'm going to select the sales rep and drop it below it, and then finally I'll drag the sales, and here is my pivot table created by selecting one single cell. You do not need to select the entire source list for creating a pivot table. Formatting in a pivot table. In this example, I created a pivot table that summarizes the sales by region and sales rep. And now I would like to format my sales amount. I would like to format my numbers as monetary values. The bad practice is to select one of these cells and then go to the Home tab and apply whatever formatting you wish. Let's say I'm formatting by using an accounting number format. What happened? I'm formatting only my selection. So if I wish to format the entire thing, I need to select the whole column. I'll undo this because I want to show you the good practice. Remember, a pivot table is created in one single container or placeholder. In VBA, we call it the pivot cache. So to format these numbers, you need to do two things. Number one, select any one single cell. You do not need to select the entire thing. Number two, use the built-in tools in a pivot table. And these built-in tools for formatting are available in the right-click menu. Select number format. Do not select format cell because this one will format only the number selected. But if you select number format, it opens a dialog box called format cell. In fact, this is a variation of the format cell dialog box. The default format cell dialog box has 6 tabs at the top. This one has one single tab. So if I'm selecting currency, let's say, and then hit OK, remember I'm selecting one single cell in the background. So when I hit OK, the entire column has been formatted as currency formatting. Do not format values in pivot tables using tools outside the pivot table. Numbers as text in calculations. Excel recognizes numbers from their right alignment in a cell. But if you type any text following a number, it becomes left aligned. And Excel recognizes it as text. So you cannot use that number in a calculation. In this example, I have some dates in column A. This is the date of submission of documents for passport renewal. And then I will have to come back after 15 business days to pick up my passport. So I would like to calculate the pickup date for my passport. So I type 15 business days, and then I'll be creating a formula that calculates the pickup date. The formula is the workday function. So if I type equal workday, and then I hit tab, it asks me for a serial number, which is the start date, and then I'll hit comma, and then I want to specify the number of dates. So I'll be selecting this cell. But look at this. Remember, this is left aligned. I typed 15, but I typed text after the 15 business days, and that's why Excel will not be able to recognize it. If I close the bracket and then hit enter, it's returning a value error. So now I want to show you the good practice, how to use numbers and use descriptive text with numbers and have them appear right aligned to use them in my calculation. So I'm going to start by applying a custom format. And this custom format will allow 2 digits and a text that appears to the right side of the 2 digits. To do this, I need to go to the Format Cell dialog box. So I'll hit Ctrl 1. I could right click and select Format Cell. And then from here I'll be selecting Custom Number Format. What would you like to have in this cell? Under Type, I'll delete whatever text I see, and then I want to limit to 2 digits, so I'll type 2 zeros. This is a code, which means I need 2 digits, and then I'll type a space, and in double quotes I'll type the text that I want to appear without modifying the contents of my cell that would be recognized as number. So I'll type business days, and then I'll hit OK. Now let's type the 2 digits, 15, and when I hit enter, look at that. Business days has been added automatically, and the whole thing is right aligned. Now Excel recognizes it as number, and if you select this cell and look at the formula bar, you don't see business days. This is stored in memory, and you see only the number that you type, the 15. If I go back and try to recreate my formula, equal workday, and then I hit the tab key, this is the start date, comma, I'll be selecting this cell, close the bracket. Before dragging down, I need to lock this cell and then hit enter. Now I could double click and send it down, and I was able to create the pickup date for my passport. Do not type text with numbers if you need to use them in your calculations. Matching data by printing. It's common to have our data split into multiple lists or tables. To match related data between 2 tables, some users tend to print the list and compare them manually. Let's look at our example. In this example, I have some client information, and for each client I have the company name, an address, a region, a zip code, first name, last name, and so on. And then I have a representative number. If I wish to get the first name and the last name of the representative who is dealing with that specific client, so I need to go to another sheet, the next sheet. So when I click on that sheet, I have the same employee ID, which corresponds to the representative number in the first sheet. It matches the representative number in the first sheet. And now I could extract the first name and the last name. I could get them. And what I see clients printing the first sheet, printing the second sheet, and trying to match the names between the 2 sheets. The extraction functions were created specifically for this purpose. And instead of switching between the 2 sheets, I'm going to create an extraction function that will bring back the first name and last name. And I start that by dragging to select the entire range where my formula will appear. When I make a selection, one of the cells, the one from which I started my selection, looks different in color. We call it the active cell. I'll be creating my VLOOKUP function, which is an extraction function that will extract the first and last name. I'll be creating it from the perspective of this active cell, equal VLOOKUP. We call it VLOOKUP because it searches vertically in the leftmost column. What are you looking for? I'm looking for this number, one cell to my left. And because I'll be copying to the right, so I want to lock it to the column by hitting the F4 key 3 times. and then I hit comma. It asked me, where is the table array? Where do you want to bring the data from? I'll go to the other worksheet and select the entire list, excluding the column labels, and I'm going to lock it right and left and up and down by hitting the F4 key. And then, where is my first name? My first name is in column 3, and my last name is in column 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for the first name, I need to type 3. For the last name, I need to type 4. And because I'm creating a dynamic function, I'm going to generate that number 3 or 4 by using the columns function. And the columns function enables me to drag the VLOOKUP function right and left. The columns function calculates the difference between a start column and an end column. I clicked and dragged from A to C. So from A to C, these are 3 columns. But look at this trick. I'm going to select A2 and lock it. So when I copy right and left or up and down, A will not change. I'm locking the reference A2, but I'm not locking the reference C2, which means when I drag to the right, it will expand and C2 will become D2, so it will return 4 instead of 3. I'll close this bracket for the columns function, and now I need the last argument for the VLOOKUP function. When I hit comma, it says we need a range lookup. Are you looking at an exact match or an approximate match? So when I hit comma, now I can see the range lookup. I need an exact match, which is false. I'll double click on that, close the bracket, and to populate my formula, I'll hit Control Enter, and look at this. I was able to bring the first name and last name without having to print the 2 sheets in order to match the data between sheet 1 and sheet 2. Do not match lists by printing them, while you could use extraction functions instead. So, there you have the most common problems with spreadsheets and some very simple solutions. Follow these principles, and you will be on your way to a virtuous life of fast, flexible, and accurate Excel-based business applications. If you enjoyed this tutorial, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next training video.